Labor Law of Cambodia, 1997, Specific Working Conditions for Agricultural Works. Chapter 7. Specific Working Conditions for Agricultural Works. Article 191. Besides the general provisions set out in this law, the following provisions apply to agricultural workers. Article 192. An agricultural worker is a worker employed on plantations, farms, the growing of crops and the raising of animals, forestry exploitation, fisheries. Section 1, Plantations, Article 193. For the purposes of this law, the term plantation means all agricultural businesses that regularly employ paid workers and that primarily cultivate or produce the following for commercial purposes: coffee, tea, sugar cane, rubber, bananas, coconuts, peanuts, tobacco, citrus fruits, oil palm, cinchona, pineapple, pepper, cotton, jute, and other commercial crops. The provisions in the present section do not apply to family enterprises or small-sized plantations whose produce is only for the local market and that do not regularly employ paid workers. A. Hours of work. Article 194. The normal number of working hours for plantation workers is 8 hours per day, or 48 hours per week. For certain categories of workers, the daily number of hours can be increased to 9 as long as the weekly total does not exceed 48. Article 195. For regular resident workers, i.e., those accommodated by the enterprise, any time over 1 hour required for traveling between workplace and home is considered to be part of the workday. For regular non-resident workers as well as casual workers, the daily working hours is determined according to the hours worked. Article 196. For certain jobs, a maximum of 2 hours may be added to the actual 8 hours of work in order for workers to be present at the work site. These jobs shall be listed in a PRACA's ministerial order of the Ministry in charge of Labor. During the 2 hours for which workers are required to be present at the work site, workers cannot be forced to perform any work and can use the time freely. Article 197. If hours worked are more than 8 hours of work per day, the extra hours are paid at the overtime rate. Overtime hours cannot be added to the actual workday to exceed 10 or in the same day, except for a case of preventing a disaster or repairing damage caused by a disaster. B. Partial payment in kind. Article 198. Partial payment of wages in kind is allowed but cannot be imposed. In case the employer makes such payment in kind, each regular worker shall be allocated, in addition to the portion of the payment he receives in cash, an allotment of 900 grams of uncooked rice per paid workday. Article 199. The payment in rice covered in the preceding article can be replaced by a payment in cash if the parties so agree. The cash value of the portion of the wage paid in kind, in any case, must be calculated exactly and recorded in a ledger kept for this purpose. C. Family benefits. Article 200. All regular plantation workers are entitled to a daily allocation of rice as indicated below for their wife and dependent minor children, legitimate or illegitimate, less than 16 years old. 800 grams for the wife, 200 grams for a child under 2 years, 400 grams for a child 2 to 6 years, 600 grams for a child 6 to 10 years, 750 grams for a child 10 to 16 years. These benefits are due to the worker as head of the household for each day worked, entitling him to wage or to any interruption of work for hospitalization or for a justified illness. Children more than 16 years of age and less than 21 years of age, who are studying in a public secondary or tertiary education institution or in an authorized private secondary or tertiary education institution, or who are working as apprentices, receive the same family benefits as minor children less than 16 years old. To be entitled to family benefits, the wife must meet the following requirements. A. She must not be gainfully employed. B. She must live with her husband, either on the plantation if he is a regular resident worker or at home, or in the husband's normal place of residence outside the plantation if he is a non-resident. To be entitled to family benefits, minor children must live with the head of the household, either at the plantation if he is a resident worker, or at his home or normal place of residence outside the plantation if he is a non-resident. However, children who study at a distant school or who attend apprenticeship and therefore cannot live with their parents are entitled to benefits if a statement attesting to this situation is issued by the public or authorized private school. If the school is a private institution, the signature of the head of the institution must be notarized by the competent ministry. Article 201. Family benefits are due to the worker as of the date of hiring on the condition that the employer was given all required supporting documents. Article 202. The worker who wants to benefit from the provisions of the present section must present the following supporting documents. A. An excerpt of marriage certificate. B. An excerpt of birth certificate for each child. C. A declaration by the head of the household claiming responsibility for his own that his wife is not gainfully employed. D. Eventually, proof of schooling or apprenticeship attendance as provided for in Article 200. Article 203. If the worker finds himself unable to procure the certificates enumerated in paragraphs A and B of Article 202 above, they can be replaced by either a court decision or by an attested affidavit as prescribed by the laws or regulations in effect regarding civil status. D. Housing. Article 204. Regular full-time workers shall be entitled to free housing, main house and outbuildings, provided by the employer under the conditions set by a PRACA's ministerial order of the ministry in charge of labor. Article 205. Housing, main house, provided to a married worker living with his family should have a minimum inhabitable area of 24 square meters. A house of this size can be provided to single workers at the rate of one house per a maximum of 4 single persons of the same sex. Article 206. The housing must be constructed in conformance with sanitation and public health regulations issued by the competent authorities. To this end, enterprises shall submit the plans and specifications for one or more types of housing to the Bureau of Labor Inspection, who will directly advise and then send them to the competent provincial or municipal authorities. If the authorities voice no reservation within 30 days from the submission, the enterprise can undertake any construction conforming to the submitted project. Special authorization can be requested for the construction of temporary housing during the installation period or the clearing of new lots as long as the temporary housing is not occupied longer than 3 years and that it conforms to general standards of sanitation, hygiene and health as established by the competent authorities. Article 207. Workers are prohibited from housing anyone other than their wife and legitimate or illegitimate children registered with the employer in the houses put at their disposal, unless otherwise authorized by the employer. Article 208. Workers must always keep their house, as well as their outbuildings, courtyard, and garden, clean. They are liable for damage to the housing they are provided. E. Housing allowance. Article 209. When the plantation cannot furnish housing to regular full-time workers, the employer is required to pay them a monthly housing allowance under the conditions determined by a PRACA's from the ministry in charge of labor in accordance with the recommendation of the Labor Advisory Committee. F. Water. Article 210. Workers must be supplied with water for all their needs, in every season, and under the best conditions possible. Article 211. The source of water shall be found, protected, and the water shall be distributed first for consumption. Article 212. In case the water is suspected to be tainted, the employer shall take all necessary measures, sterilization by boiling or chlorination, etc., recommended by the Public Health Service. G. Provision of supplies. Article 213. 4. Plantations or work sites that are located far from regular markets and that do not have adequate supplies of their own, the employer can set up a store that provides staples such as rice, dry salted fish, smoked fish, salt, tea, etc. The store must operate according to the conditions defined in Articles 42 and 43 of this law. H. Latrines. Article 214. In each community of workers, the number of latrines must equal at least 1/4 of the number of houses. These latrines shall be in covered buildings, placed at a sufficient distance from the living areas. They shall be enclosed and maintained permanently in a sanitary state. Article 215. Household refuse and garbage of all kinds shall be placed in a pit away from water sources and buried daily or burned. Article 216. Dead animals must be buried far from water sources, wells, cisterns, and inhabited areas. I. Death interment or cremation. Article 217. Death shall be certified by the competent authorities and interment or cremation shall be organized as prescribed by the regulations in effect. Article 218. Upon the death of each regular worker, the employer shall furnish a coffin, white cloth, transportation of the coffin to the cemetery or the crematorium, and shall be responsible for funeral costs up to at least 1 month wage of the deceased worker. J. Day nursery. Article 219. When a plantation employs 100 or more regular working resident women, the labor inspector can, on the advice of the Health Service and the provincial or municipal governors, require the employer to construct, organize, and maintain a day nursery near the workers' housing. This day nursery will be placed under the supervision of a female caretaker, who will be eventually assisted as needed by 1 or more helpers, depending on the number of children, and will be provided with necessary supplies such as milk and rice. For infants more than 2-year-old, the owner of the plantation shall distribute, in addition to rice, a variety of food. The rations shall be monitored by the health service of the enterprise. Article 220. The maximum age of admittance for children to the day nursery is 6 years. Article 221. A day nursery shall be opened and operated according to the conditions specified above, provided that there are at least 10 children enrolled. K. School. Article 222. When there are at least 20 children aged at least 6 years of regular resident workers at the plantation, the employer must construct and maintain, at his own expense, a sufficient number of primary schools located close to the workers' housing. Article 223. The employer must equip these schools with furniture and teaching materials, at his own expense, in conformance with the directives of the competent administrative services. Article 224. Teacher salaries are to be paid by the plantation. Article 225. If the school is located more than 1,500 meters from the village, the employer is required to provide transportation for the school children at his expense in vehicles that provide protection from sun and rain. Article 226. The children of regular non-resident workers can be admitted to the schools on the plantation, but the employer is not responsible for their transportation. Section 2. Other agricultural works. Article 227. The particular working conditions in agricultural enterprises other than plantations shall be established specifically by proposal of the Minister in charge of Labor after having consulted with the Labor Advisory Committee.